Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we're the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's
right. Oh, we did have a letter from the producer.
Oh, was it reminding us that we're not allowed to take unsanctioned trips, like he told me when I was in the woods?
No. It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to just talk about Golden Sun.
Oh, well, good news for you, Producer Doug. We're not talking about that today, but...
Maybe when spooky season is over, we'll talk about Gold. It'll be our first, Producer Doug. Once spooky season's over, Golden Sun will be the top of the list.
That's right.
Right next to the other episodes that we promised to do.
That we already put at the top of the list.
That's right. But this one will go right to the top because you're the producer and you're in charge. Right? That's how it works. We work for him.
If it goes right to the top, according to the way we structure our list of episodes that we haven't recorded yet, that means it's going to go above APB All Points Bulletin, which we've been putting off for 4 years.
That's true.
Okay. I just want to...
So we'll record it before All Points Bulletin.
Okay, good.
And then we can go back to ignoring that game.
But not ignoring Producer Doug.
No, we would never ignore Producer Doug, and that's why this episode's not about Golden Sun.
That's right.
But anyway, Zach.
Yes, Seth.
What have you recently been playing?
No, Seth. My recently played is related to today's episode, so I'm going to ask you, what have you been recently playing?
What if my game is also related to today's episode? It's not a survival horror game, which is what we're talking about today. So I guess I will go forward. It is I would argue, spooky game based on the concept. And it's actually a game I saw at PAX. And I think I've talked about it before because I played the demo during Next Fest. I think we talked about it during Next Fest as well. And that's a game called Mind Diver. It released right at the end of September, and it was developed by Indoor Sunglasses and published by Playism. And in the game, you have to go into somebody's mind and unravel a mystery because they have forgotten it. Their memories are very lost and destroyed. And you have to go through their mind and recover their memory and put pieces back together to uncover a problem because you're solving it. So there's somebody missing. And in order to figure out where this person is or what happened to them, you essentially have to unpack this person's life leading up to this situation. It plays from a first person's perspective, and you are swimming through somebody's brains. It's an interesting kind of trippy setting, and because there's various different things that are floating around in this person's brains. Memories, like people's faces and images of them, and the graphic style is like 3D vignettes where everything is just a little blocky. So it's like you could kind of see these people's faces, but it's just a little blocky and a little off. Not like Minecraft blocky, but definitely not like HD.
Like the way like PS1 graphics look, where like it's almost like they have like a textured face, but because the PS1 couldn't render graphics that well, it looks very ugly.
I think that's a fair description. A little bit better now because it's clearly a modern game. Yeah. But it's like definitely in the stage of like not like what they would look like normally, but perhaps what they would look like if you were in their mind diving around and floating around it. Doesn't it? You understand what I'm saying now?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at a screenshot of it. You know what it looks like? It looks like if you took people and you put them in a room, but then you push saran wrap on them. Yeah. And you had like a mold of those people.
Yeah. That's a better description. And you you listen to different story elements. You jog memories by putting the right objects into places where they need to in the vignettes. So like maybe they're trying to remember about being at a police station and the police officer is just like fuzzy. If you find the right police officer, you can put them in that location in the vignette, and they will remember and talk about their interactions with that police officer. Same with like the case ID. You could put the case ID down and they'll know more about the police report that was taken. So you can kind of help reconstruct these people's memories to find this missing person working for this agency. where you're a mine diver. It's very Oberdin-esque, where Oberdin you were exploring vignettes on a ship to figure out what the cause of that ship was. This you're exploring somebody's mind and attempting to figure out their mystery. Lucas Pope actually has talked about this game pretty highly, so that drew my interest in. And definitely has been a game that I was watching, waiting for it to come out when I saw it at PAX, just this past PAX. And so I'm excited to have it release.
Great.
Zach, what have you recently been playing?
Recently, I finished the Resident Evil 4 remake, which originally came out in 2023 and I previously talked about, but I have been playing Separate Ways, the Resident Evil 4 remake DLC. So Resident Evil 4 originally did have a side story to it called Separate Ways, and the remake adds the story in as a DLC, and it's basically you play through Resident Evil 4 but from the perspective of Ada, the character who occasionally shows up in Resident Evil 4, often assisting Leon. Ada is a character who's kind of a mysterious character in the Resident Evil lore. It's heavily implied that she is like a mercenary. She's often hired to do jobs for different people, and in Separate Ways you play as her working for Albert Wesker, who was the villain from the first game, and you're tasked with finding this thing for Wesker located in the same area that Leon is located, so you cross paths with Leon a bunch. But Ada plays a little differently than Leon. For one, she has a grappling hook and also a magical robotic eye so that she can see things like footsteps in different areas. She kind of plays, I don't want to say like more powerful than Leon, but it seems like she has more resources at her disposal than Leon does. Leon kind of goes into everything pretty much empty-handed. So it's kind of neat to play as a character who feels a bit more able to take on the horrors that she's encountering versus Leon, who seems sometimes like he's just struggling to get by. And it's a fun game. I like playing Separate Ways. I will say I haven't been as spooked as I was when I was first playing through Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 has some genuinely scary moments in it. Separate Ways, a little less scary when you can grapple hook or blow away monsters with a submachine gun. But it's cool, and I like seeing the game from a different perspective.
I have a question about Resident Evil 4 before we start today's episode.
Okay.
So in Separate Ways, you're playing as Ada Wong?
Yes.
And she's in the village, right? Resident Evil 4 takes place
Yep.
in that village?
Yeah.
And she runs into Leon?
Yes.
But they don't team up?
Leon is specifically searching for the president's daughter.
Okay.
Ada is trying to get a sample of a material to Wesker, and she just happens to be in the same village. But she helps him, but she's not going to go against her mission that she's getting paid money for, versus Leon, who is serving his country.
Oh, I see. They just conveniently are in a village that's overrun by creatures.
It's kind of like if Boba Fett and Han Solo happened to be in the same area and weren't against each other, but had similar goals. They wouldn't necessarily team up.
No, right. But they might accidentally help each other.
Yeah, they might accidentally help each other. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. I was confused. I thought they were both good guys and they were just deciding to high five and ignore each other.
Yeah, Ada's kind of more complicated. She helps Leon when she wants to, but most of the time she's just trying to make money.
That's fair. Okay, that makes sense.
Well, this episode is going to be about the precursor to Resident Evil. It's going to be about the game Sweet Home, which we have talked about a little bit before. In fact, I looked at our notes. We talked about it way back in episode 3 or 4 when we were going through genres. And we also talked about it in episode 100 when we talked about Resident Evil. And Sweet Home is the precursor to Resident Evil. It's the game that inspired it. When you hear survival horror game, you might immediately have these images of fixed cameras, blocky 3D characters, and tank controls. But horror games have been around forever, and the idea of a survival horror game didn't necessarily begin with Resident Evil, despite it being partially responsible for the genre being named as such. Just a fun little tangent, and I think we talked about this when we talked about Resident Evil for the first time, but the reason survival horror is called survival horror is because on the original Resident Evil jewel case from Japan, it has the genre written on it, and it says survival horror. And this is something they did where they would just put a genre to best define define the game. It wouldn't necessarily be a genre that was like known. It would just be like, this game is about surviving and this game is about horror. So this is a survival horror game. And that really codified the term into usage for video games. So that's just a fun little fact, is that the only reason we have survival horror is because of a label.
Right. Yeah. I think we mentioned that in our Resident Evil episode.
Now, Sweet Home is interesting. It was originally based on a film of the same name that was directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa in 1989. The plot of the film is often compared to the 1963 film The Haunting, which itself was based on the Shirley Jackson novel The Haunting of Hill House. The film, Sweet Home, follows a film crew who travels to a mansion that was previously owned by an artist named Ichiro Mamiya. Mamiya famously went missing 30 years prior to their trip to his house after the death of his son. And when he disappeared, he left all of his artwork and such behind. The team wants to preserve his artwork, specifically some frescoes that were discovered in the house. And they want to preserve these frescoes so they can be published properly, while also producing a documentary about the life of Mamiya. When they arrive at the house, things take a turn for the spooky, when one of the members of the team, an art restorer named Asuka, is possessed by the ghost of Mamiya's late wife. The team must deal with the ghosts that haunt the house and uncover the mystery that keeps the spirits behind. And they learn pretty quickly that Lady Mamiya lost her son when the son was playing in the furnace, and she turned the furnace on, thus killing her son. And she tried to save her son, became terribly scarred, was driven mad by her sorrow, and then proceeded to kidnap children in the local village and kill them so her son could have people to play with.
Yeah, so moral of that story is, if your child is prone to play in the furnace, check the furnace before you turn it on.
And then you too will not be horribly scarred and driven to madness.
Yeah, or like block your furnace off so the child can't climb in.
Yeah, they didn't baby-proof their house, apparently.
Yeah, like lock the basement or something. I don't... This could have been prevented by a master lock. If only Master Lock was here.
Master Lock, keeping your house from being haunted by the ghost of a strange woman.
The most easily picked lock could have solved this for $12 at Walmart. The film was distributed by Toho in 1989, following its theatrical run. The producer, Juzo Itami, controversially reshot and re-edited the film for home video. In response, Kiyoshi Kurosawa would sue Itami and his production studio. Kurosawa would lose the lawsuit, and Itami was allowed to distribute his version of the film. Kurosawa's original theatrical version has never been released on home media. Itami's cut was only available as a VHS release in Japan, and later a Laserdisc release. However, it was never brought to DVD or Blu-ray, except if you have a VHS of it and you brought it to DVD or Blu-ray, then you would have it on DVD or Blu-ray.
I actually have a bootleg copy of it on DVD that was ripped from the Laserdisc.
Ooh, which is the proper one to rip.
Yeah, because it's what they would have done anyway if they put it on DVD, is just rip it from the Laserdisc. Most early DVDs, spoiler alert, are just Laserdisc rips. But, well, what's interesting is that the whole lawsuit thing I was reading, this was like very, very, like almost a faux pas for Kurosawa to sue his producer and the production studio. It's like really something that doesn't happen in Japanese filmmaking, is like the director suing someone because they re-edited your film. But it's kind of interesting, right? Like the idea that the producer went around the director to make the movie more his movie, and like the director's response was like, no, I'll bring you to court, and the court was like, no, it's not your movie.
Yeah, like first of all, generally the producers are paying for everything, and they hire the director because they are skilled at directing. But also, if you hired this guy because he was skilled at directing, why didn't you trust him to do it? It's like, then why you wasted a bunch of money? Just, you should have shot it yourself. And some producers do that. They produce and direct their own films. Like they, you know, because they have maybe enough money to do it, where they don't need outside producers, or they just need producers that are in their same wheelhouse. But they do executive produce or produce and direct. So like it could have been done. So I feel like there could have been better communication between these two. The same year that the film would go to be released, a video game adaptation was produced by Capcom. The game would be produced by Itami, and Kurosawa would act as a supervisor on the project. The game's director would be Togura Fujiwara, who had previously been involved with Ghosts and Goblins and Mega Man 2. Fujiwara would travel to the set of Sweet Home and take notes in order to get ideas for the video game, but was told by Kurosawa to not worry about making the game a one-to-one adaptation. And it wouldn't be a one-to-one adaptation, as the plot would diverge from the films. The game would be released in December of 1989 and was promoted via a trailer that was included in the VHS and Laserdisc release of the movie.
I mean, it looks kind of like your standard RPG game. The aesthetic it's almost like you're playing Dragon Quest, but in a mansion.
All right, I've got to talk to you about something real quick. So we've talked about how he would go on to travel to the set to take notes. I've opened some images of the gameplay, and it just looks like the image that I'm looking at looks like a top down, like a brick floor and maybe some white wall with a hole in it. I don't know how much inspiration, like the translation of going to a set, taking notes in 1989 to make a game with a restricted color palette, and you were only going to do what you were going to do. It's not like you were like, I don't know, I guess they need some sort of inspiration, but he could have been sent pictures for some of the, here's some photographs of what or watch the movie.
So for those who don't know, Sweet Home plays as an RPG, like a standard NES RPG. There's random encounters, there's, stats that you can build up. You play as a party of characters. You actually take control of more than one of the different characters of the documentary team, and you have the ability to swap between the characters at any time. And this comes in handy as the party gets separated, so it's crucial to swap between players to deal with different things around the house. So your party isn't always in the same place. They get separated pretty early on, and you are required to swap between all of the characters so that you can get them to where they need to be and to do the things they need to do. Each character has a unique item that is required to beat the game. These items are a lockpick, a vacuum cleaner, a medical kit, a lighter, and a camera. These items can be both dropped and picked up by other characters. This is incredibly important as Sweet Home features permadeath. If a party member dies, they are dead for the rest of the game. There is no way to revive them. So you can't visit a church and revive your party. You can't get an item that brings them back from the grave. They are dead. If the character who is carrying that item that you need dies, you can retrieve the item from their corpse. You were required to have certain things, so if you miss something that you were supposed to get, you're not beating the game. Each death is also accompanied by a particularly gruesome sequence of the character dying, such as characters having their skin ripped off or being cleft in half. On NES graphics, so they're not particularly incredibly violent, but it's a gruesome game, and I posted a little screenshot here for you, Seth, of one of the characters' death sequences.
Yeah, it's either a character getting violently flayed down to the bone or Dr. Manhattan forming up.
It's Dr. Manhattan, and it looks like that, yeah, doesn't it?
Day 17, I was a skeleton.
Now, in Sweet Home, depending on how many characters are alive at the end of the game, it determines which ending you get, as the game has multiple endings. Unlike in an RPG like Final Fantasy, Sweet Home is mostly about solving puzzles and inventory management. There are enemies. You encounter ghosts, haunted dolls, zombies, etc. But a lot of the game's focus is on trying to solve puzzles using the items you require, and you do have to backtrack. Backtracking is heavily needed in the game, as some areas you encounter early on can only really be accessed when you get an item you obtain later in the game. Uniquely, the game also features QuickTime events, and I say uniquely because, yes, QuickTime events were around with video games. Some early Laserdisc games utilized QuickTime events, like Dragon's Lair, which was, you do have QuickTime events, or Time Growl, which was on the Sega CD, and I think was also a Laserdisc game. But you didn't really have QuickTime events in console games, especially RPG games. They hadn't really put in that type of style of gameplay yet. So it is kind of unique for the time. When a QuickTime event happens, it's typically when you're encountering a trap. If you fail the QuickTime event, you die. And again, permadeath. Your character dies forever. Collectibles are also useful in Sweet Home. You can find healing items, but you also will discover various notes and diary logs that are used to piece together the story of the world. Another unique element of this game is all of the visual storytelling, very akin to one review I saw of this game that was published not too long ago, compared it to BioShock. This is an NES RPG game that has a storytelling style similar to BioShock of all games. This is a very a game that was very ahead of its time. Now, the story of Sweet Home, the game, is close to the movie, but there are some differences. For example, Asuka is not possessed, so you get to play as her and she can survive till the end of the game. Actually, there are 2 other characters who do die in the movie, and you could technically keep them alive through the game. There's also a character that's introduced in the game named Yamamura, who is an old man that offers you help throughout the game, and he is heavily implied to be the missing Ichiro Mamiya, the artist who disappeared 30 years ago. Might just be an old man who shows up and hangs out with you.
For how it did when it got released, Sweet Home did pretty well in Japan upon release. It received a 4 out of 5 from the publication Famicom Hishu Shoban, who also called it the best game of the year. The publication Famitsu would praise the game's graphics and sound effects, as well as the effective use of atmospheric horror, but would criticize the overall difficulty of the game, which, to be fair, it's the NES. Difficult games was kind of the bread and butter of that system. The game would never be brought to the United States, and there isn't any official reason why it never came out to the States or wasn't localized. The prevailing theory is that the game was just too gruesome and dark to localize to the United States, possibly being too much of an undertaking if they wanted to censor it all. Remember, the games like in Japan had, like, if you think about Splatterhouse, which, put a pin in that. If you think about Splatterhouse and you think about the game in Japan, there was blood that would come out of the enemies, but if you played it in the US, it was like green goo or like sweat.
Yeah.
So then if this game was very bloody, which it was, like that skeleton up ahead, I don't even know how they would make that skeleton. Like, just make it a skeleton? Like, I don't, like, then it would look just like you're like you just became a skeleton after, because they'd have to take all the blood out, so there would be a lot of work to censor and localize it to the United States market. The other reason was that North America RPGs weren't exactly bestsellers on consoles. While they sometimes did better on PCs, they never really hit their stride, and a non-fantasy RPG horror game likely was too much of a risk to try and bring to an English-speaking audience. So yeah, like Final Fantasy would do well, but if it didn't look like Final Fantasy, good luck.
Right. And yes, Final Fantasy did well, but it wasn't doing as well as like some of the other big hitters.
And it did better in Japan.
And it did, obviously it did better in Japan. Dragon Quest did amazing in Japan, but it just wasn't selling. Like, RPGs just weren't big in America, so it would have just been way too big of a risk.
In the years since the game came out, the game had received a number of different unofficial translation and has been sold via reproduction cartridges at conventions or game stores within the United States. This has given the game a much broader reach, allowing fans of horror to finally get to enjoy the true beginning of Sweet Home. A more modern review from Destructoid calls Sweet Home one of the very best games ever made and praised the game's ability to stitch together a cohesive world in the limited space of an NES, and to my earlier chagrin of a game that looks like it's in an NES. Why do they need to go to the set? Perhaps the travel to the set truly helped them understand the story.
Yeah. Sweet Home would continue to influence games in the years to come. In fact, in 1992, a game for the Super Famicom called Otogirso would be released. This was a horror visual novel, though it's more accurately called a sound novel because it doesn't use a lot of visuals. It's more of like a text adventure that utilizes the sound in the game to actually bring the horror elements. It's a fascinating Super Famicom game, but there's definitely a reason why it never got released in the United States, and that's because visual novels have never sold here well. So imagine a visual novel for the Super Famicom in 1992.
I don't think they sell here well today. I think they sell probably the best that they sell today, and I don't think they sell that well.
The most obvious influence that Sweet Home would have would be the fact that its director, Takuro Fujiwara, had a protege. His protege was Shinji Mikami, who was commissioned by Capcom to make a game based on Sweet Home for the PlayStation, and this game would evolve over the years to become Resident Evil, which again we talked about in episode 100. Sweet Home, though, directly inspired the mansion setting of Resident Evil. All of the puzzles, the use of the diary entries, the multiple endings, and the specific items that characters have, such as Chris having a lighter and Jill having a lockpick. Those are items that they specifically have. It would further influence future Resident Evil titles. The ability to switch between characters in Resident Evil 0, very similar to how you can do it in Sweet Home. The QuickTime events in Resident Evil 4, very similar to the QuickTime events from the traps in Sweet Home. And even the plot of a film crew exploring an abandoned mansion, or rather an abandoned house, would be reused for Resident Evil 7. So Sweet Home's DNA is still very much ingrained into Resident Evil's DNA. And without Sweet Home, we would never have had Resident Evil, at least the way that we do have it. So if you're a fan of Resident Evil, I definitely recommend checking out Sweet Home. If you're a fan of RPG games or horror games, you also might be interested in Sweet Home. Again, it is not officially available on the NES, but you can definitely find a translated copy floating around either on the internet or available somewhere. And if you don't mind the kind of more gruesome elements of the game, I think it's definitely worth the play. Though, as a warning, it gets a little violent and there are kind of some gross segments of the game. It is a horror game, but yeah, that's Sweet Home, and that will do it for this episode on Sweet Home and the another episode down in our Classic Horror Brothers extravaganza.
The Classic Horror Brothers extravaganza.
Now, getting into our retro rewind, Seth had me play
a horror game.
Yeah, a horror game. It was Oregon Trail 3. Very spooky. The spookiest thing about the game is the FMVs. They are a little creepy. Seth told me to play this game for MS-DOS, which was really hard because it never came out for MS-DOS. It did come out on Windows 95. A little bit of a pain to get Windows 95 games going, but sure enough, I did. Regardless, Oregon Trail 3rd Edition is the sequel to the Oregon Trail 2. Oregon Trail 2, I consider the far superior Oregon Trail game because A, it has the best music ever in video games, just flat out. I think the Oregon Trail 2 has the best music in all video games, and also it's just a great game. But Oregon Trail 3rd Edition it's like Oregon Trail 2 if they made it a little worse. It retains some of the similarities. The FMB elements are there. Beyond that, it's still just Oregon Trail, but like not as good as original Oregon Trail. So like, does it hold up? I mean, it's Oregon Trail. You should probably just play the original Oregon Trail or Oregon Trail 2. Those are the better Oregon Trail games. If you want to play like OG Oregon Trail for the aesthetic, I'd recommend it. If you want to play a good Oregon Trail game, play Oregon Trail 2 because it is fun and it's incredibly nostalgic for me. So I want you to experience that nostalgia.
If you want to play a trail game where there's no risk to you, you can play Yukon Trail where you'll get to the end eventually.
And if you want to play a trail game where a giant floating jaguar head visually assaults you, then you can play the Amazon Trail.
Yeah, which is also a trippy game in its own right, which I think we talked about.
It's like not just that there's like a giant jaguar head that's just like there, but also like, isn't there like time travel involved?
Yeah, you have to time travel, not to derail, but we have plenty of time here to derail the retro rewind. But the Amazon Trail involves you going through segments of paddling on the water or time traveling to a different location. And at that different location, you need to learn a skill from the people at that location, including the skill of like identifying plants like that you can eat in the jungle, such as bananas. That's an important skill to have, and then you get you collect all these skills and you fill in your cheetah shield. When you fill in your cheetah shield, you beat the game when you fill it in. You also have to help Henry Ford at some point in time.
Hang out with Nazis?
I think something to do with his rubber plant, but yes.
Anyway, Oregon Trail 3, just play Oregon Trail 2. Next week, Seth, you can play Nightmare on Elm Street for the NES.
Oh, I'm excited about that. Zach, you had me play 3D Hero for MS-DOS, a game that came out in some random time. I'm not actually sure. There's not a lot of information on this game because it was published by Engine Technology Company and developed by Tinyin Nin in Taiwan. And they released 3 games they used the Doom engine, and 3D Hero was one of those games that they released. They also, from what I was reading, there was a lot of issues with piracy and like people just doing whatever they wanted outside of the US and not respecting intellectual property laws, which still happens today. But I guess id got around with it by just selling a license for $1 per game. And so these games were technically licensed because it didn't really care, but they were interesting. So essentially 3D Hero or by its other name, which is translated Records of the Three Kingdoms, Legend of the Shunhan Heroes, features 6 playable characters. And if you want to change the level up, you just have to restart the game. And you fight rival warlords throughout the game. It's a hack and slash third-person game done in the build engine, which historically it's not in third person, which it makes the game a little janky. It's the entire game, beyond it just being a janky third-person game in the build engine, has other issues with it entirely, including camera angle that's just, you can only fix it by keys that you can't actually reassign, and they don't exist in most laptops because it's a game in Taiwanese. So if you want your camera fixed, you need a different keyboard, but you can get this game translated in Taiwanese. I don't know why you would want to get it, because the original is going to be in Taiwanese. If you switch a character in a level, the inventory is not consistently handled the same way. The screen size option doesn't save when you finish a level, so maybe you like to play in a certain resolution or zoomed in a certain level. Let me tell you, you're going to reset that every time you go into a different level, which, one of my favorite things playing a game is resetting the settings every level. There's just, there could be items that are important that you can't actually pick up, and that would put you into a deadlock where you can't beat the game and you have to actually restart the level. Beyond all of that, it's just a mess. I can't recommend anyone to go out and play this. I don't think the game holds up. But if you want to see a third-person game in a Doom engine, just look up the one video this game has out there on YouTube and watch it. Don't go through the effort that I went through to play this messy game. So pass it along. Next week, Zach, to stay back into the season of spooky games, which we deviated this week, you could play Splatterhouse for the arcade.
I will. Well, thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode. If you have any memories of playing Sweet Home, if you have any thoughts on Sweet Home, email us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We're available wherever podcasts can be found, be it Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio. We're available on social media, Classic Gaming Brothers or CG Brothers Pod. We're also available on Twitch and YouTube, Classic Gaming Brothers, and our website, classicgamingbrothers.com. Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That's right.